So welcome students. Today we will explore biology chapter excretory products and their elimination, that is chapter number 16, and this will be your theory part 2. And in this session we will cover NCERT section 16.2, 16.3 and 16.4. So this is disclaimer. So these will be our learning objectives for today. So we will understand glomerular filtration process. Then we will identify filtration barriers. Then we will learn about tubular reabsorption and secretion. Then we will comprehend countercurrent mechanism. So these will be our learning objectives for today. So this is our index. We will cover urine formation, which is 16.2 section of your NCERT. Then we will cover functions of the tubule, which will cover 16.3 of your NCERT. Then we will cover mechanism of concentration of the filtrate, which will cover 16.4 of your NCERT. Then we will bind up the chapter with summary, NCERT based question, keynotes and interesting questions. Let's start with the introduction. So we know how urine is formed in our bodies. This process is essential for removing waste and keeping our internal environment balanced. So think of it as the body's own way of filtering and recycling. So it's much like how water treatment plants cleans and manages water. So urine formation mainly involves three main processes, that are glomerular filtration, reabsorption and secretion. Here each step is vital for removing waste and keeping our body's chemistry balanced. Remember these three terms: glomerular filtration, reabsorption and secretion. They form the foundation of kidney, and kidney keep our blood clean and maintain homeostasis. So it's important to note that these processes takes place in different parts of the nephron. Each part is specialized for its own role, making the whole system highly effective. So urine formation is essential for maintaining body's homeostasis. This means keeping things like water, salts and pH levels in balance, which is necessary for all our cells to function properly. Now you can see filtration layers, that is capillary endothelium, basement membrane and Bowman's capsule epithelium. Let's talk about glomerular filtration. So this is where everything begins, just like the opening move in a chess game. So here notice how blood is filtered by the glomerulus, a tiny network of capillaries. This process is called as glomerular filtration, and it's essential for removing waste products from the blood while keeping important components inside. So pay attention to the filtration rate. The kidneys filter about 1100 to 1200 milliliters of blood every minute. That's a huge amount of blood, showing just how efficient and hardworking our kidneys are. This filtration rates represent about 1/5 of the blood pumped out by each ventricle of the heart every minute. So a significant portion of our blood is being filtered at any given time, highlighting the importance of this process. So you have already seen the different filtration layers, which are capillary endothelium, basement membrane and Bowman's capsule epithelium. So to summarize, blood is filtered through three distinct layers in the kidney. Each layer here acts like a different stage in water purification system, ensuring only waste and excess substances are removed. So the first layer here is the endothelium of glomerular blood vessel. So this is the initial barrier, allowing only small molecules to pass while keeping larger components like blood cells inside the bloodstream. The second layer here is the basement membrane. This acts as the selective filter, blocking medium-sized molecules and providing an extra level of protection. The third layer is the endothelium of Bowman's capsule. So the porocytes here create narrow slits, allowing only the smallest molecules to pass into the filtrate. Let's focus again on glomerular blood pressure as the driving force for filtration. So emphasize that without this pressure, the entire filtration process would come to a halt, much like water filter that isn't connected to a tap. So this pressure pushes blood components through the filtration layers. So if you can imagine how strong a stream of water can push dirt through a sieve, separating clean water from the debris. Now, maintaining constant pressure is vital for continuous filtration. So the kidney's ability to keep this pressure steady ensures that waste is removed efficiently even if our blood pressure changes throughout the day. Now let's shift to the structure of podocytes. These cells are essential for the filtration barrier in the kidney, acting as the final checkpoint before substances enter the filtrate. So podocytes are specialized epithelial cells, maintaining they have a unique structure and function compared to other cells lining our organs. They are located in the Bowman's capsule, which is the first part of nephron where blood filtration begins. So think of Bowman's capsule as a collection cup for the filtered fluid. So podocytes have unique foot-like projections called as pedicles. So it is important. These projections wrap around the capillaries, creating a tight, or you can say tight but selective barrier. So these projections form a intricate arrangement, almost like interlocking fingers, which help create this filtration slits. The specialized gap between these projections are called filtration slits, or we can say slit pores. These slits are just the right size to let water and small molecules through, but block larger proteins, or can say cells. So this is you can see the mechanism of ultrafiltration through this picture. So let's talk about filtration process. First, blood enters through the efferent arteriole. This is like the main entrance to the kidney's filtration system, bringing in blood to be clean. As blood enters, it passes through three filtration layers, as we have discussed earlier. Each layer here acts as a checkpoint, ensuring only the right substances move forward. Remember, only components smaller than proteins can pass into the Bowman's capsule lumen. This selectivity is crucial for keeping important molecules like proteins in the blood. So all of this happens at the molecular level, which means that it's happening on a scale too small to see, but with huge importance to our health. So because of this fine structure of this process, it's called as ultrafiltration. So this term highlights just how precise and through the kidney's filtration system is. So you can take a look here how blood flows in and pass through filtration layers, and only certain substances enter the Bowman's capsule. Let's talk about GFR. So the amount of filtrate formed by kidneys per minute is termed as GFR. So this is a key measurement for kidney health. So to make sure to remember this definition. In a healthy individual, the GFR is approximately 120 ml per minute, about 180 liter per day. So that's a huge volume, showing just how active our kidneys are in filtering blood. Let's move on to how body regulates GFR. This is crucial because the filtration rates need to be just right for our bodies to function properly. The kidneys have built-in mechanism to regulate GFR, and these mechanisms ensure that filtration rate stays within a normal healthy range even if conditions in the body changes. So one of the most efficient regulatory mechanism is carried out by juxtaglomerular apparatus, or we can say JGA. Think of JGA as the kidney's own control center for filtration. So if GFR falls and the cells in the JGA are activated to release renin, this is like an alarm system that helps bring the filtration rate back to normal. So renin stimulates glomerular blood flow, which helps restore the GFR to its normal level. So this feedback is essential for maintaining the body's internal balance. Let's talk about reabsorption. So the kidneys filter a large volume of fluid every day, about 180 liters. So this highlights the scale of their filtration work. Now notice that only a small fraction of this filtered fluid, about 1.5 liters a day, is actually excreted as urine. That's less than a typical soda bottle. This means our bodies are very good at conserving water and other useful substances. So this shows that about 99% of the filtered fluid is reabsorbed. So you can think of it like a recycling system where almost everything is reused and only a tiny bit is thrown away. So this efficiency is vital for maintaining our body's fluid balance. Now let's look at how this reabsorption happens. The cell lining the nephron tubules called as tubular epithelial cells are responsible for this. They use both active and passive mechanism to selectively reabsorb substances our body needs. So you can see the process of urine formation. You can see filtration, the steps of urine formation, that is filtration, reabsorption, secretion, and excretion. And in the second picture, you can see reabsorption and secretion of major substances at different parts of the nephron. Here, arrow indicates the direction of movements of the materials. So the kidneys filter a huge amount of blood fluid, but thanks to the reabsorption, that only takes a small amount of it and lost it as urine. Let's talk about reabsorption. So glucose, amino acids, and sodium ions are reabsorbed by active transport. Emphasize that active transport requires energy, just like pushing something uphill. So the body invests energy to reclaim these essential nutrients. Now we see that nitrogenous waste and water are reabsorbed by passive transport. So passive transport is energy free, like water flowing downhill, or you can say downhill. So this distinction is important for understanding the how body manages energy and resources. So I've already talked about it, about this picture or about the diagrams. So let's introduce the process of secretion. After reabsorption, secretion is the next key part in urine formation. So you can think of it as body's way of making sure that any leftover or excess substances are actively removed from the blood. Now, tubular cells in the nephron secrete substances like hydrogen ions, potassium ions, and ammonia into the filtrate. This is like a final sweep, ensuring that anything potentially harmful or in excess is sent out of the body. So this secretion step is crucial because it helps maintain the ionic and acid-base balance of our body fluids. Let's talk about PCT, or we can say proximal convoluted tubule. So this is lined by simple cuboidal epithelium which has a brush border made up of microvilli. These microvilli act like tiny fingers, increasing the surface area for absorption. So the brush bordered epithelium is especially important because it increases the surface area for reabsorption. This means the PCT can absorb more substances efficiently, helping our body retain essential nutrients. Now let's move on to reabsorption function of the PCT. This is where the PCT really gets to work, taking back important substances from the filtrate. The PCT reabsorbs almost all essential nutrients such as glucose and amino acids. It also reabsorbs about 70 to 80% of electrolytes like sodium and potassium. So these are crucial for maintaining body's fluid balance and for nerve and muscle function. Additionally, PCT reabsorbs about 70 to 80% of water from the filtrate. This is like the body's way of conserving water, especially important when we are dehydrated or need to retain fluids. Let's talk about pH and ionic balance. So this is a key way by the kidneys help control the acidity of our blood by moving H plus into the filtrate, and the body can get rid out of the excess acid. Next, the kidneys also secrete ammonia into the filtrate. So ammonia acts as a neutralizer, combining with hydrogen ions to form ammonia, which is less harmful. Now let's highlight the absorption of bicarbonate ions from the filtrate. The bicarbonate ions is like a buffer or shock absorber for pH changes. By reabsorbing it, the blood ensures that the blood remains at right pH, preventing dangerous swings in the acidity. All these steps work together to help maintain the pH balance of body fluids. This balance is essential for the proper functioning of enzymes and cells. So I've already talked about this picture. Now let's focus on descending limb of Henle's loop. This section is especially important for reabsorption. Now, first, the descending lymph is permeable to water but almost permeable to electrolytes. This means water can leave the filtrate and enter the surrounding tissue, but salts can stay inside. So, think of it like a door that only lets water out and not salt in. As a result, the filtrate becomes more concentrated as it moves down the descending lymph. This concentration is crucial. This concentration is very important for kidney's ability to produce concentrated urine. So remember that descending lymph's main job is to reabsorb water and concentrate the filtrate. Let's focus on details of ascending lymph of Henle's loop. This is where some of the most important processes for urine concentration takes place. First, the ascending lymph is responsible for minimum reabsorption. This means it doesn't take back much from the filtrate, allowing most substances to continue moving along the nephron. So it's like a checkpoint that lets most things pass through. Next, it's important to note that this lymph is impermeable to water but allows electrolytes to be transported. So water can't move, but salts like sodium and chloride ion can. So this selective movement is crucial for setting up the concentration gradient in the kidney. Because electrolytes are leaving the filtrate but water is not, the filtrate becomes more diluted as it moves downward the cortex. This difference is this difference in permeability between water and electrolytes is key. So it helps maintain a high concentration of solutes in the medullary intestinal fluid, which is essential for kidney's ability to concentrate urine later on. So the osmolarity of the medullary intestinal fluid stays high. This high osmolarity is what allows the kidney to reabsorb water efficiently in other parts of the nephron, especially when your body needs to conserve water. So that wraps up our discussion on ascending lymph of Henle's loop. Remember its unique properties which are essential for kidney's function. Now let's talk about distal convoluted tubule, or you can say DCT. So conditional sodium reabsorption happen in DCT. This means that the DCT can adjust how much sodium it reabsorbs based on the body's needs, often under the influence of hormones like aldosterone. So it's like a smart valve that helps maintain the right balance of salt in our blood. Let's look at this conditional water reabsorption. The DCT can also control how much water is reabsorbed depending on signals from the body, especially from the antidiuretic hormone. This helps the body conserve water when needed, such as during hydration. Now let's highlight bicarbonate reabsorption. The DCT absorbs bicarbonate ion, which are crucial for maintaining body's acid-base balance. Think of bicarbonate ion as buffer that helps neutralize acids, keeping our blood pH stable. Now we have learnt about DCT. Remember its key roles: conditional reabsorption of sodium and water, and bicarbonate reabsorption. Now let's take a closer look at the function of DCT. The secretion of hydrogen ions, or H+, is the major function of DCT. So this process is vital for removing excess acid from the blood, helping to keep our body's pH in healthy range. So think of it as DCT acting like a pH adjuster. The DCT also secretes potassium ions, or we can say K+. This is important because potassium levels must be tightly control for proper muscle and nerve function. The DCT acts like a fine tuner, making sure we don't have too much or too little potassium in our system. Another substance secreted by DCT is ammonia, or you can say NH3. It is a toxic byproduct of protein metabolism, and its removal is essential for preventing harm to the body. So DCT helps convert this waste into a form that can be safely excreted. One of the DCT's main role is to help maintain the pH balance of our blood. By controlling the secretion of acids and bases, that DCT ensures our blood stays within a narrow, healthy pH zone. So DCT also regulates the balance between sodium and potassium ions. This balance is crucial for mainly bodily function, including nerve signaling and muscle contraction. So here you can see the image which is showing the reabsorption and secretion that we have already talked about. So DCT is essential for secreting certain ions, maintaining pH, and balancing sodium and potassium. So in our next session, next slides, we will see how hormone influence these processes and what happens when DCT doesn't function properly. Now let's look at the structure of collecting duct. It extends from the kidney's cortex, which is the outer layer, all the way down to inner medulla. This long path allows it to interact with different parts of the kidney and plays a important role in urine formation. Let's focus on collecting ducts function with water. This is where the water makes important decisions about how much water to keep or release. It's like a smart valve that adjusts based on what your body needs. The collecting duct is the major site of water reabsorption. So you can imagine it as a sponge that can soak up water from the fluid passing through, helping your body conserve water when needed. So because of this water reabsorption, then the collecting duct helps produce concentrated urine. So when body needs to save water, the urine becomes darker and more concentrated. You can say uh, reabsorption, the process of reabsorption is doing this job. Let's look at collecting duct's role in urine handling. It allows small amount of urine to pass into the medullary interstitium. This controlled release is essential for maintaining the concentration gradient needed for water reabsorption. By allowing urine to enter the medullary interstitium, the collecting duct help maintain osmolarity. So this means it keeps the concentration of solutes in the kidneys in a region high, which is very crucial for drawing water back into the body and preventing dehydration. Now let's focus on another important function, like how the collecting duct helps regulate pH and ion balance. This is like body's way of making sure the chemical environment in our blood stays just right for all our cells to work properly. So one key job here is maintaining blood pH. The collecting duct can adjust the acidity or alkalinity of the blood. So it does this by selectively secreting hydrogen ions or we can say potassium ions. Think of it as a fine tuning process where the collecting ducts adds and removes specific ions to keep everything in balance, which is very important for nerve and muscle function. Remember that collecting duct is very essential for final adjustments in urine composition and for maintaining body's internal balance. Mechanism of concentration of the filtrate, and this section is covering NCERT section 16.4. So here it is written, mammals have the ability to produce concentrated urine. Now let's look at the specific example. Human kidneys can concentrate urine up to 4 times the original filtrate. This means our body are very efficient at conserving water, which is especially important in situations where water is scarce, like during intense exercise or in hot climates. The main contributors to this process are Henle's loop and we can say vasa recta. Think of them as the main engines in the kidney's water saving system, working together to create the conditions needed for the urine concentration. This entire process is called counter current mechanism. So it's like two streams flowing in opposite direction, allowing for maximum exchange and efficiency in concentrating urine. Let's focus on structure and arrangement of these components. Henle's loop has two limbs, the ascending limb and descending limb. Each limb has a unique role. The vasa recta is specialized blood vessel with two portions. It's like a parallel pipeline running alongside Henle's loop to maintain the concentration gradient necessary for water absorption. Both Henle's loop and vasa recta are arranged very closely to each other, and this close arrangement allows for efficient exchange of substances, similar to how two neighboring houses might share a fence for convenience. They operate in opposite directions, a concept known as counter current flow. This is very important. So this step is is a key for maximizing the concentration of urine, just like two conveyor belts moving in opposite direction can transfer items more efficiently. So we have covered the ability of mammals to concentrate urine, the structures involved, and how their arrangements and direction of flow make this process possible. Let's focus on osmolarity gradient. This is the difference in solute concentration from the outer or to the inner parts of the kidney. So it's like a staircase with each step representing a higher concentration as you go deeper. Notice that the gradient increases from cortex to the inner medulla. This means that the deeper you go to the kidney, the more concentrated the environment becomes. This setup is crucial for kidney's ability to reabsorb water. So in the cortex, the osmolarity is about 300 milliosmoles per liter. This is relatively dilute, similar to the concentration of most fluids. So remember, the cortex is the outer part of the kidney. As we move to the internal medulla, the osmolarity rises to approximately 1200 milliosmoles per liter. This is much more concentrated, and this difference that allows the kidney to pull water out of the filtrate and concentrate urine. This osmolarity gradient is also essential, is very essential for urine concentration. Without it, our bodies would lose too much water in urine, especially in dry condition. So it's a great example of how our bodies adapt to conserve water. So you can look into this picture, which is showing nephron and vasa recta, and the whole mechanism of counter current. So remember, the osmolarity gradient is key for concentrating urine and conserving water. So let's focus on osmolarity gradient. This gradient is like a slope that allows water to and solutes to move in and out of the cell. It is much like how water flows downhill. So it's a fundamental concept in both cell biology as well as physiology. Now let's identify the key factors or key substances involved in creating this gradient. Two main substances creating this gradient are NaCl, that is sodium chloride, and urea. First, NaCl, or you can say sodium chloride, is essential. So it's like a salt in our food, but in the body. It helps control water movement and keeps cells functioning properly. Second, we have urea. So urea is a waste product, but it also plays an important role in maintaining the osmolarity gradient, especially in the kidneys. So think of it as helper that ensures the system works properly. So we have explored the osmolarity gradient and main substances involved here. So remember, sodium chloride and urea are the key players here in maintaining balance in biological system. Now let's highlight specific process of NaCl transport. This is a key step in how kidney manages salt and water balance. First, NaCl is actively transported by ascending limb of Henle's loop. This means the cells here use energy to move salt out of the filtrate and into the surrounding tissue. So it's like a pump pushing salt uphill, which is essential for creating concentration gradient. Next, the NaCl is that was pumped out is exchanged with the descending limb of vasa recta. Imagine two streams flowing side by side, exchanging materials as they go. So this exchange helps maintaining the concentration differences in the kidney medulla. After the exchange, NaCl returns to the interstitium via the ascending vasa recta. So the interstitium is the space that around the kidney tubules, and this recycling ensures that the salt is available to maintain the gradient. So it's like a returning process to a central pool for reuse. So all these steps together create concentration difference in the kidney's medulla. This type of difference is crucial because it allows the kidney to reabsorb water and produce concentrated urine. So you can see the mechanism of counter current. Now let's talk about urea transport. This signals that we are about to explore how urea, a waste product, is handled by the kidney. So pay attention to each step here, as understanding this process is key to grasping how our bodies maintain balance. First, small amounts of urea enter the thin ascending limb of Henle's loop. So think of this as a narrow passageway where only certain molecules like urea can pass through. So this step is the beginning of urea's journey through the nephron. Next, urea is transported back to the interstitium by the collecting tubule. Imagine the collecting tubule as shuttle, moving urea out of the nephron and into the surrounding tissue. This recycling helps the kidney maintain the right concentration of the substances. So this movement of urea is important because it contributes to maintaining the osmotic gradient. The osmotic gradient is like a carefully balanced salt water solution that allows the kidney to concentrate urine and conserve water, especially when we are unhydrated, or you can say dehydrated. So that wraps up our discussion on urea transport. Remember here that each step in this process is essential for kidney's ability to filter waste and maintaining balance in the body. Let's talk about counter current mechanism in detail. So it involves coordinated transport of substances, and it is maintained by special structural arrangement. And what it does, it creates and maintains medullary concentration gradient. Fourth one is it facilitates water reabsorption. So you can see these are four main important component of counter current mechanism. It involves coordinated transport of substances and is maintained by special structural arrangement. What it creates and maintains medullary concentration gradient. This is very important, and it facilitates water reabsorption. Let's talk about water movement. So concentration gradient enables water movement. Next, we observe that how water passes from the collecting tubule to interstitium. The collecting tubule acts like a final checkpoint, and the interstitium is the surrounding area where water is reabsorbed. So this step is crucial for making sure the body doesn't lose much water in the urine. This process concentrates the filtrate into the urine. So as water leaves, the remaining filtrate becomes more concentrated, turning into a urine. Let's focus on how kidneys can concentrate urine significantly. So this is a key adaptation that allows it to survive even when water is scarce. So notice that final urine can be 4 times more concentrated than the initial filtrate. This means that our kidneys are extremely good at reclaiming water from what start as dilute solution. So it's similar to how water filter keeps recycling water until only the waste is left. So this ability demonstrates the effectiveness of the counter current system in the kidneys. The counter current system works like two lanes of traffic moving in opposite directions, allowing for maximum exchange and efficiency. It's a brilliant example of how biological systems are designed for optimal performance. So the humans kidneys efficiency in concentrating urine is perfect example of how our bodies are adaptive for survival. Let's focus on why water conservation is very crucial for mammals. So imagine living in a dry environment or desert without efficient water saving mechanisms, or here survival would nearly impossible. So this adaptation allows this adaptation of water saving allows mammals to thrive in places where water is scarce. Now let's see how this process help organisms survive in different environments. Whether it's hot desert or we can say cold tundra, being able to adjust and conserve resources is a key. So this flexibility is a major reason why mammals are found all over the world. Maintaining body fluids homeostasis is like keeping the right amount of oil in a car engine. Too much or too little can cause problems. So this process ensures that the internal environment of the body stays stable, which is essential for all life processes. This point highlights how the process is an evolutionary adaptation. So over generations, especially that developed better ways to conserve water and maintain balance, were more likely to survive and reproduce. So it's a great example of natural selection. So I've seen how water conservation, adaptability, homeostasis, and evolutionary changes all play an important role in survival. Let's see summary. So urine formation occurs in 3 steps. So first one is filtration. Starting with filtration in the glomerulus, this is where blood is filtered and the initial filtrated form, setting the stage for the next steps. The second step, we have already talked about it, is reabsorption, which takes place in the tubules. Here, the body reclaims useful substances from the filtrate, ensuring that essential nutrients and water are not lost. The third one is the secretion. It also in the tubules. This is where the body adds extra waste products and ions into the filtrate, making sure the final urine contains all the substances that need to be excreted. Now we also talked about tubule functions. Here each section has specialized role in processing filtrate and forming urine. So I have talked about proximal tubule. It is responsible for reabsorbing water, glucose and amino acids. So you can think of it as body's way of grabbing back the most valuable item before anything is lost. So the loop of Henle. Second, the loop of Henle creates a concentration gradient in the kidney. This gradient is crucial for concentrating urine and conserving water, especially when body needs to retain fluids. Then we talked about distal tubule. It helps in regulating the balance of sodium and potassium ions. So this fine tuning ensures that body's electrolyte levels remain stable, which is very important for nerve and muscle function. Then we talked about collecting duct, which is the final state for water reabsorption. Here, the water decides how much water to release or to keep, depending on hydration levels and hormonal signals. So, I've already talked about, discussed about concentration mechanism. These processes basically allow the body to conserve water and produce urine that is more concentrated than the original filtrate. The counter current, talking about the counter current mechanism, it's a multiplayer system that is a key mechanism that plays a very important role in concentrating urine. So it uses the unique structure of nephron to create a strong osmotic gradient in the kidney medulla. ADH, or you can say antidiuretic hormone, controls how much water is reabsorbed in the collecting duct. When ADH level are high, more water is reabsorbed and urine becomes more concentrated. So the medullary osmotic gradient is the difference in solute concentration from cortex to the medulla of the kidney. This gradient is very important for drawing water out of the filtrate and concentrating urine. The vasa recta, or can say a network of capillaries, helps in maintaining the modulary osmotic gradient. It's like support system ensuring that the gradient stays intact for efficient water reabsorption. Finally, urea cycling further enhances the concentration of urine. So we have already talked about it, that urea moves between the tubules and medulla, helping to keep the osmotic gradient strong and allowing the kidney to conserve more and more water. So remember, you have to remember that urine formation is a multi-step process that keeps our body balanced and healthy. So this is that was our summary. Now let's start with NCERT based question, and this is question number 1. And the question is, the filtration fraction in humans is. So options are 1%, 10%, 20%, and 99%. Let's see the answer. So here the answer is 20%. Let's focus on the formula for filtration fraction. Filtration fraction equals GFR divided by RPF, then multiplied by 100. This formula is tells us about filtration fraction. Okay, so you can calculate the percentage of plasma filtered by the kidneys. So here it is very important to understand that this formula is the foundation for the next step. Now let's look at the value for GFR, or you can say glomerular filtration rate. In a healthy adult, this is about 150 ml per liter. Think of it as the amount of plasma being filtered every minute by the kidneys glomeruli. Now we have RPF, or renal plasma flow, which is about 625 ml per liter, and this represents the total plasma flowing through the kidneys each minute, like the total amount of water entering the filter. Let's do the calculation together. 125 divided by 625, then multiplied by 100 gives us 620%. This shows that only a fifth of plasma entering the kidneys is filtered out as a filtrate. So what does it mean? It means that 20% of the plasma flowing through the kidneys become filtrate, while the rest continues in the bloodstream. So this selective filtration is crucial for maintaining body's fluid and electrolyte balance. So this is our second question. The question is the maximum rate at which substance can be reabsorbed in the kidney is called TM, or you can say transport maximum. So which of the following statements about maximum reabsorption is correct? We have to opt the correct option. So you can look after the options which one is incorrect, which one is correct about TM, or we can say transport maximum. Let's look into the answer. The answer is option C, that is the TM mechanism represent the carrier mediated processes that become saturated. So TM mechanism in kidney reabsorption is a carrier mediated process that we have already talked about it. So think of these carriers as specialized workers or trucks that move substances across the kidney cells. So each carrier here can only handle a certain amount at a time, just like a delivery truck can carry so many packages. So it becomes saturated when the plasma concentration of substances exceeds the capacity of the transport proteins. So when this saturation happens, the excess substances appears in the urine. So if the carriers are overloaded, the body simply gets rid of the surplus by excreting it. This is why, for example, glucose can be found in urine if blood sugar level are very high. So classic example of is here is glucose reabsorption. The renal threshold for glucose is about 180 to 200 mg per deciliter of blood. This is very important. So if blood goes above this level, the carriers can't reabsorb all the glucose, so some spills into the urine, a condition which is called as glucosuria. This is often seen in people with uncontrolled diabetes. So remember, TM mechanism is all about the maximum capacity of kidneys transport system. So this is third question, and here the question is match column A. We have given one column which is A with the most appropriate option which is column B. So we will match terms from both the columns. And we have given 4 options, so we have to opt the correct one. Let's see the answer. So here our correct option is option A, that is A will match with 3, B will match with 4, 5, C will match with 1, D will match with 2, and E will match with 4. Let's see the solution in detail. Talking about A, the concentration gradient from medulla to cortex is maintained by 3. So counter current multiplier emphasize that the counter current multiplier is a mechanism that increases the difference in concentration. It's much like a series of steps that make a slope steeper. So this is essential for kidney's ability to concentrate urine. B, which is vasa recta vessels matched with 5, which is counter current exchanger. So the vasa recta acts as a counter current exchanger, preserving the gradient created by the loop of Henle. So you can think of it as a system of pipes that keeps hot and cold water separate, maintaining the temperature difference. Now C, C was matched with 1, which is the main function of counter current system. First is helps in conservation of water. So the counter current system's primary job is to help the body retain water, especially when it's needed most. So it's like a smart irrigation system that only uses water when necessary. For D, the U-shaped portion of nephron involved in counter current system matched with 2, that is loop of Henle. So the loop of Henle's shape is very crucial for its function, allowing more efficient exchange and gradient creation. So imagine it as winding path that lets travelers move in both directions, facilitating interaction. Finally, E, the parallel arrangement of tubules in counter current mechanism was matched with 4, that is ascending and descending limb. These limbs run side by side, enabling the counter current mechanism to work efficiently. So it's similar to 2 parallel conveyor belts moving items back and forth. So the key takeaway is that each part of nephron is associated with blood, and its associated blood vessels work together to maintain water and salt balance in the body. Understanding these connections helps us appreciate the complexity and efficiency of biological system. So these are the keynotes, or if we can say interesting facts about this chapter. So the kidney filters about 180 liters of blood daily, producing only 1.5 to 2 liters of urine. So here also it is written here it is also written tubule functions. So we have already talked about specific functions of the kidney tubule. Each section of tubule has unique role in processing the filtrate, much like different departments in a factory working together to produce the final product. Now we already talked about proximal tubule. It is our first stop. It reabsorbs about 65% of filtrate, which includes water, salts, and nutrients. This is like main sorting area where most useful materials are reclaimed right away. Then the next was loop of Henle, which comes into play. So its job is to create concentration gradient in the kidney, which is essential for concentrating urine. So it is important for urine concentration. Think of it as setting up a system of levels so water can be drawn out efficiently when needed. The distal tubule is responsible for fine tuning the electrolyte balance. It adjusts the levels of sodium and potassium and other ions, acting like final inspector, making sure everything is balanced before the urine moves on. Then the collecting duct, we talked about collecting duct. It determines the final concentration of urine. Depending on body needs, it can reabsorb more or less water, much like adjusting the final settings before a product leaves the factory. Now let's look at we also looked at the mechanism of concentration mechanism. This involves several coordinated processes that helps us conserve water and maintain balance in the body. The counter current multiplier system in the loop of Henle is the key to the process. It creates a strong concentration gradient, allowing the kidney to reabsorb water efficiently. So you can imagine it a a clever plumbing system designed to maximize water savings. Then ADH, which is antidiuretic hormone, plays a crucial role here. So it controls how much water is reabsorbed in the collecting duct. When you are dehydrated, your water releases more ADH to help conserve water. So it's very important to understand the main function of antidiuretic hormone. Then we talked about medullary concentration gradient, which increases from the cortex to the papilla. So this means that the deeper you go into the kidney, the saltier it gets, which has draw water out of the filtrate. Then urea recycling, talking about it, it further enhances the kidney's ability to concentrate urine. Urea is recycled between the collecting duct and the loop of Henle, helping to maintain the concentration gradient. So this brings us to the end of the session. Remember, kidney's ability to filter, reabsorb, and concentrate is vital for keeping our bodies in balance. So this is our keynotes. So students, these are some interesting questions about this chapter. You can solve this after completing this lesson. This will help you to know how much you understood the fundamental concepts of this chapter. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope this lesson was useful for you.